The alarm clock on Claire Hutchins' nightstand buzzed at 5:47 a.m., 13 minutes before it was supposed to. She lay still for a moment, staring at the water stain on the ceiling of her apartment, a brownish, uneven circle that had been there since she moved in 2 years ago. The landlord, Mr. Beaumont, had promised to fix it 4 times. She had stopped counting after that. Claire was 26 years old, and her apartment on Gallatin Avenue in East Nashville was exactly the kind of place that reminded you every single morning that you were still at the beginning of something, not the middle of it, and certainly not the end. The radiator knocked against the wall in the corner. The window above the kitchen sink let in a draft that no amount of tape had fully solved. The refrigerator hummed a little too loudly, like it was trying to say something. She sat up, swung her legs over the side of the bed, and pressed her feet flat against the cold hardwood floor. That was her ritual. Feet flat, back straight, 3 slow breaths. Her nursing school professor, Dr. Patricia Weldon, had told her once that the way a person starts their morning tells you everything about their character. Claire had taken that seriously. She took most things seriously. That was both her greatest strength and, depending on the day, her most exhausting quality. She walked to the bathroom, brushed her teeth, and looked at herself in the mirror. Brown hair that fell just past her shoulders, dark circles she covered with concealer that cost $4 at the drugstore on Woodland Street, a small scar on her chin from a bicycle accident when she was 9, green eyes that her mother, Donna Hutchins, had always called the kind that see too much. Donna was in Clarksville now, 45 minutes away, working double shifts at a distribution center to help pay for her own mother's assisted living costs. Claire called her every Sunday. They talked for exactly as long as the conversation needed, no longer, no shorter. They were that kind of family, practical, loyal, not given to sentimentality, though the love ran deep and steady, like a river that didn't need to announce itself. Claire had been enrolled in the nursing program at Vanderbilt School of Nursing for 18 months. It was part-time, because full-time wasn't financially possible. She worked 4 shifts a week at the Golden Fork, the most prestigious restaurant in downtown Nashville, and used every dollar above rent and groceries to pay her tuition. She had a spreadsheet on her phone. She checked it the way other people check social media, compulsively, hopefully, with a faint anxiety that the numbers might have shifted without her permission. She was 14 months away from finishing, if nothing went wrong. She got dressed in her uniform, white button-down blouse, black slacks, black non-slip shoes that she polished every Sunday night, and made herself a breakfast of scrambled eggs and toast. She ate standing at the counter, reading over her pharmacology notes on her tablet. She had an exam in 11 days. She highlighted 3 things, wrote 2 notes in the margin, and finished her coffee before it got cold. At 7:15 a.m., she walked out of her building into a morning that smelled like rain and diesel, and the bakery 2 doors down, which opened early and always had something in the oven by the time the sun came up. Nashville in late October had a particular quality to its light, golden and slightly melancholy, like the last few pages of a good book. Claire noticed it every year and felt something she couldn't quite name. Not sadness exactly. Something more like awareness. She took the bus downtown. She liked the bus. She liked watching people, the man in the back with the crossword puzzle, the teenage girl with the enormous headphones who mouthed lyrics to something Claire couldn't hear, the older woman who got on at Fatherland Street every single morning with a canvas bag full of what appeared to be plants. Nashville moved in the morning with a kind of determined energy. It was a city that believed in itself. Claire appreciated that. She arrived at the Golden Fork at 7:55 a.m., 5 minutes before her shift officially began, which was the same as every day. She pushed through the side staff entrance, hung her coat in the locker room, pinned her name tag to her blouse, and went out to the floor. The Golden Fork occupied the ground floor of the Harrington Tower on 5th Avenue in the heart of downtown Nashville. It had been open for 11 years, and in that time it had accumulated 2 James Beard nominations, 1 Michelin star, a long waiting list for weekend reservations, and a reputation as the kind of place where deals were made and anniversaries were celebrated, and the occasional very famous person could eat without being bothered, because the staff had been trained to treat everyone with the same level of professional discretion. The interior was all warm wood and brass fixtures and soft amber lighting. There were 42 tables on the main floor and 6 private dining rooms upstairs. The kitchen was run by executive chef Raymond Calloway, a compact, intense man from Louisville who had trained in Paris and come home with opinions about butter that he was happy to share with anyone who asked, and several people who hadn't. He was demanding and fair in roughly equal measure, which made him someone you respected even when he made you redo something 3 times. The front of house was managed by Gregory Marsh, the restaurant's general manager. Gregory was 44, immaculately dressed, and had the particular quality of a person who had been in hospitality long enough to have seen everything and maintained his composure anyway. He was not unkind, but he was precise. And precision in his world meant that things were done correctly or they were done again. He liked Claire. He had told her once, in the oblique way that managers in fine dining tell you things, that she had good instincts on the floor. Coming from Gregory, that was practically a standing ovation. Claire's section on most weekday evenings was the center of the main floor, tables 12 through 19, which were considered the prestige tables, the ones visible from the entrance, the ones where the restaurant put its best guests, and by extension, its most reliable servers. Being assigned to that section was not an accident. Claire knew that. She also knew that it meant higher stakes, which suited her. Her colleagues that evening included Devon Ashcraft, 29, who had been at the Golden Fork for 4 years and was saving to open his own food truck. Devon was funny and unflappable and had a gift for making difficult guests feel like they'd chosen the table themselves. Maggie Tillman, 32, who had transferred from a restaurant in Atlanta and still talked about the biscuits there with a reverence that bordered on religious. Maggie was methodical, careful, and the person you wanted covering your section if you had to step away. Joel Pierce, 24, a server who had been there 8 months and was still learning the wine list, but compensated with genuine enthusiasm and the kind of face that made people want to help him succeed. And Andre Whitfield, the head sommelier, a 41-year-old man from Memphis who knew more about wine than anyone Claire had ever met, and communicated most of his opinions through precise, minimal sentences that somehow conveyed enormous depth. This was the team. They had a rhythm together. Not exactly friendship, but the kind of professional intimacy that comes from spending many hours under pressure in the same space. They knew each other's habits, covered each other's mistakes before they became visible, and communicated mostly through looks and small adjustments that would have been invisible to anyone watching from outside. That Tuesday evening in late October began ordinarily enough. The reservation had been made 6 days in advance under the name Al-Rashidi Party. 4 guests, VIP notation, dietary specifications on file. Gregory had flagged it in the staff briefing that afternoon with the particular tone he used for guests who required additional attention. The primary guest is Mr. Farid Al-Rashidi, Gregory said, standing at the front of the room with his hands clasped behind his back. He's a frequent visitor to the United States for business. I've spoken with his assistant, a Mr. Khalid Nasser, who has been thorough in communicating expectations. Mr. Al-Rashidi travels with a security consultant and 2 business associates. He will be joining us at 7:30. Table 7 has been prepared accordingly. Table 7 was the best table on the floor, slightly elevated, set apart from the others by a low wooden partition, with a view of both the entrance and the kitchen pass, which meant the guest felt simultaneously seen and private. It was the table Gregory reserved for guests he wanted to impress. Claire Gregory said, making eye contact with her in the way that communicated assignment without making it a question. "You'll have table 7 this evening." "Of course," she said. She spent 20 minutes reviewing the dietary specifications. No shellfish, no pork, no alcohol to be offered unless requested. Tea service, specifically a high-grade loose-leaf Earl Grey, to be prepared and served promptly upon seating. Water poured before the guests arrived. Bread service to begin immediately. Gregory had also noted in the margin of the briefing sheet in his small, precise handwriting, attentive but not intrusive. This guest values efficiency. Claire understood. She had had guests like this before. The kind of person for whom service was not a human exchange, but a logistical transaction, where the goal was to be present when needed and invisible when not. She could do that. She was good at reading what a table required and adjusting accordingly. At 7:28 p.m., Farid al-Rashidi arrived. He walked through the entrance of the Golden Fork like a man who had never in his adult life waited for anything. He was tall, perhaps 6'2", with a broad build that his dark, excellently tailored suit did nothing to diminish. He was 47 years old, though he carried himself with the kind of ageless authority that belonged to people who had been powerful long enough that the years had simply organized themselves around them rather than the other way around. His hair was dark with grey at the temples. His face was angular, handsome in a way that had probably always been intimidating. He wore a watch that Claire, who knew almost nothing about watches, could nevertheless identify as extraordinarily expensive by the way the light caught it. Behind him came 3 men. The first, compact, efficient-looking in his 30s, was clearly the security consultant, the kind of person whose job was to be unnoticed until he was necessary. The other 2 were in business attire, carrying tablets and the slightly harried expression of men whose entire professional purpose was to be ready for whatever Farid al-Rashidi needed next. Gregory met them at the entrance. Claire watched from the edge of her section as her boss navigated the greeting with his characteristic smooth precision. Welcoming, efficient, no wasted words. Farid spoke to him briefly, nodded once, and allowed himself to be led to table 7. Claire was there, standing at a respectful distance as they arrived at the table. She waited until the group had seated themselves, Farid at the head, his 2 associates across from each other on either side, the security consultant at a slight remove before approaching. "Good evening," she said. "Welcome to the Golden Fork. My name is Claire. I'll be taking care of you this evening." Farid did not look at her. He was already looking at the menu, which he had opened before he was fully seated. One of his associates, the younger of the 2, perhaps 35, with rectangular glasses, glanced up briefly and gave a small nod that was neither warm nor cold. The other associate was typing something on his tablet. "Tea," Farid said. "Not a request, a notation." "Of course," Claire said. "I'll have that for you immediately." She went to the service station, where the Earl Grey had already been prepared. Loose leaf, steeped precisely, in the restaurant's silver tea service, which consisted of a pot, a strainer, a small pitcher of warm water for dilution, and 2 cups on saucers, all on a handled silver tray. She lifted the tray, confirmed the temperature with her hand near the spout without touching it, and returned to the table. What happened next took less than 3 seconds and would be talked about for considerably longer. The restaurant floor at the Golden Fork was polished hardwood, beautiful, maintained, and on that particular evening near table 7, almost imperceptibly damp from where Joel had mopped a small water spill during the pre-service setup, and the floor had not entirely dried near the edge of the low wooden partition. Claire approached the table from the left, as protocol dictated. She was aware of her posture, the angle of the tray, the position of each item on it. She had done this hundreds of times. She was good at this. Her left foot found the damp patch. It was not a fall. It was barely even a stumble, A small, involuntary shift of weight, less than a second of misalignment. But the tray tilted, and the teapot, which was full, slid 2 inches to the right, and before Claire could fully correct, the spout tipped, and a significant stream of hot tea poured directly onto the right sleeve and lapel of Farid al-Rashidi's jacket. The sound it made against the fabric was very small. The silence that followed was very large. Claire set the tray down on the table immediately, already reaching for the folded linen cloth at her apron. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, sir. Let me—" Farid al-Rashidi stood up. He did it slowly, deliberately, the way a person stands up when they want the act itself to be a statement. He looked at his jacket, the tea darkening the fabric of what was, Claire would later learn, a bespoke Brioni suit that cost more than 4 months of her rent. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he looked at Claire. His eyes were dark and very still. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, which was somehow worse than if he had shouted. "Do you have any idea," he said, "what you have just done?" "Sir, I'm deeply sorry. There was a damp spot on the floor and I lost my footing for a moment. I'll have this taken care of immediately. We can—" "Be quiet," he said. She stopped. The restaurant had not gone entirely silent, but the tables nearest to table 7 had. Devon, from across the floor, had noticed. Maggie had turned. Gregory, near the host stand, had taken 2 steps forward and then stopped, reading the situation. "You are a waitress in a restaurant," Farid said, still in that quiet, measured voice that carried more contempt than volume ever could. "Your singular purpose in this establishment is to carry things from one place to another without destroying them. You cannot even manage that." He looked at his associate, the younger one, and said something in Arabic. The associate looked at the table. The security consultant had gone very still. "I want to speak to the manager," Farid said, turning back to Claire. "And I want this person removed from my table. Permanently." "Sir," Claire said, and her voice was steady, which cost her something because her hands were not. "I understand you're upset, and I am genuinely sorry for the accident. I would like the opportunity to—" "I said be quiet." The words were precise and cold and landed like something physical. "You have ruined a jacket that you could not afford to replace in a year of working here. You will not speak to me as though this is a conversation between equals. Get me your manager and remove yourself from my sight." The nearest tables were definitely quiet now. Claire looked at him for exactly 1 second, not defiantly, but not with her eyes down either, and then said, "I'll get Mr. Marsh for you right away," and turned and walked toward the host stand, with her back straight and her face composed, and if her vision blurred slightly at the edges, she was the only one who knew it. At table 31, in the quieter corner of the restaurant, partially screened by a low arrangement of dried flowers and brass candle holders, a woman named REBA MCENTIRE was having dinner with 2 friends. She had a glass of sparkling water in front of her and had just finished telling a story about a tour bus incident in Oklahoma that had made both of her companions laugh hard enough that one of them had to put down her fork. REBA was in Nashville for 2 days of studio work. She had chosen the golden fork because she liked the salmon and because the corner table at 31 was the kind of place where she could eat without it becoming an event. She had been watching table 7 since Farid al-Rashidi sat down. Not with particular intention. The table was simply in her line of sight, and she was, by nature and by profession, someone who paid attention to people. She had watched the server, young, composed, clearly competent, prepare the tea service with the kind of focused care that most people didn't notice, but that REBA always did. She had watched the small stumble. She had seen immediately that it was an accident. She had watched the tea hit the jacket, and then she had watched what followed. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She sat very still, with her hands wrapped around her glass, and watched a man in an expensive suit reduce a young woman to the status of an object in front of a room full of people who were all pretending they couldn't hear every word. When Claire walked away from the table with her back straight and her chin up and her hands at her sides, Reba set her glass down on the table with a quiet, definitive click. "Excuse me a moment," she said to her companions. Gregory reached Claire at the same time she reached him. He had seen enough of the exchange to understand the shape of it, and his face had the particular quality of a man who was already doing rapid calculations about competing obligations. "Mr. Al-Rashidi is requesting to speak with you," Claire said. Her voice was professional. "Perfect." "I saw," Gregory said quietly. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." The floor near the partition was still damp from the pre-service cleanup. I flagged it for Devon to dry completely. Gregory looked at her for a moment in the way that acknowledged what had happened without making it the conversation they were having right now. "Go to the back, I'll handle the table. I can go back out." "I know you can. Go to the back, Claire." She went. The break room behind the kitchen was small. A table, 4 chairs, a rack of coats, a bulletin board with the week's schedule pinned to it. Claire sat down at the table and pressed her palms flat against the surface and breathed. 1 breath, 2, 3. She thought about her pharmacology exam. She thought about the spreadsheet on her phone. She thought about her mother working double shifts in Clarksville, who had never in Claire's memory cried about something that happened to her at work. She thought about what Dr. Weldon had said about character and how it revealed itself under pressure. She did not cry. She sat there for 4 minutes, which was exactly how long it took for the sharpest edge of the humiliation to dull itself enough that she could think around it. Then she stood up, checked her appearance in the small mirror above the coat rack, and went back out to the floor. Gregory was at table 7. She could see him from the kitchen pass, hands clasped behind his back, listening to Farid with an expression of professional calm that gave nothing away. She could not hear what was being said. She took her other tables, 12, 14, 16, with the same competence and attentiveness she always brought, because the guests at those tables had nothing to do with what had happened, and they deserved her full attention. It took Gregory 11 minutes at table 7. When he came back to the floor, he found Claire at the service station. "He wants you reassigned for the evening," Gregory said, keeping his voice below the ambient noise of the restaurant. "I've moved Maggie to his section." Claire nodded. "He also requested that I document the incident formally and consider disciplinary action." Gregory paused. "I told him that our internal personnel matters are handled according to our own procedures and that I would personally ensure his evening was exceptional going forward." "Thank you," Claire said. "The floor was damp. That's a workplace conditions issue, not a performance issue. I've noted it." He looked at her directly. "You handled yourself with professionalism under difficult circumstances." "That's also noted." It was, for Gregory Marsh, an unusually direct statement of support. Claire understood the weight of it. "I appreciate that," she said. She went back to her section. She was clearing table 14, a couple who had just finished dessert and were now deep in the pleasant, comfortable silence of 2 people who had known each other long enough to not need to fill every moment. When she heard a voice behind her, "Excuse me, hun." Claire turned. The woman standing 2 feet away was in her early 70s, with auburn hair and a face that was simultaneously warm and entirely self-possessed. She was wearing a dark blazer over a simple top, and she had the unhurried quality of someone who had long ago stopped needing to prove anything to anyone. Claire recognized her immediately. She managed, to her credit, not to show it in her face in a way that would have been unprofessional. She simply said, "Yes, ma'am, can I help you?" Reba McEntire looked at her for a moment, not unkindly, but with the direct assessing attention of a person who was deciding something. "I was sitting over there," Reba said, gesturing toward table 31, "and I saw what happened earlier. All of it." Claire kept her expression neutral. "I apologize if the incident was disruptive to your evening. That's not what I'm talking about, and I think you know that." Reba's voice was gentle but clear. "I'm talking about the way that man spoke to you, in front of an entire restaurant." A brief silence. "I'm fine," Claire said. "These things happen." "They do," Reba agreed. "And most of the time the person they happen to stands there and takes it because they don't feel like they have a choice. I watched you take it, and I watched you walk away with your head up. And I thought—" She paused as if choosing words carefully. "I thought that was either very strong or very sad, or probably both." Claire looked at her. Something shifted, very slightly, in the composure she had been maintaining for the past 40 minutes. "Both," she said, quietly. Reba nodded as though this confirmed something. "What's your name?" "Claire. Claire Hutchins." "Claire." She extended her hand. "I'm Reba." "I know who you are," Claire said, shaking it. "It's an honor to meet you, Ms. McEntire." "Reba, please." "I've been Reba since before you were born, and I intend to keep it that way." She tilted her head slightly. "How long have you been working here?" 2 years. "You like it?" "I'm good at it," Claire said, which isn't quite the same thing, but it's close enough for now. Something in Reba's expression shifted, a sharpening of interest, or maybe recognition. "What's the for now part?" "I'm finishing a nursing degree at Vanderbilt part-time, about 14 months left." Reba was quiet for a moment, then, "Can I ask you something that might seem forward?" "Yes." "When that man spoke to you the way he did, not when you walked away, but in the moment, what were you thinking?" Claire considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "I was thinking that he was wrong about me, and that being wrong about me didn't make him less powerful, and that I had 7 other tables that needed my attention." A pause. "And I was thinking that the floor was wet, and it was Joel's job to make sure it was dry, and I should have checked it myself." Reba laughed, a real laugh, not a polite one. "Well," she said, "that is the most thoroughly practical answer I have ever heard to that question." Claire almost smiled. "I'm a practical person. I can see that." Reba was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her jacket and took out a card, plain, white, with a phone number and an email address and just her name. "I don't make a habit of this," she said, holding it out. "But I'd like to continue this conversation somewhere other than your workplace, if you're open to it. Not tonight. When you have time." Claire took the card. She looked at it. She looked up. "Why?" she asked. Not rudely, genuinely. Reba considered the question with the same seriousness Claire had given hers. "Because I've been watching people my whole career," she said. "And occasionally you see something in a person that makes you want to know what they're going to do with it. That's all." She held Claire's gaze for a moment, then nodded once, the way people do when a decision has been made and the conversation has done what it needed to do. "You have a good rest of your night, Claire Hutchins," she said. "You too, Mr. Reba," Claire said. Reba walked back to table 31. Claire stood with the card in her hand for exactly 3 seconds. Then she put it in her apron pocket and went back to work. At 9:15 p.m., Gregory Marsh knocked on the door of the small office behind the bar, where he took calls when the floor was busy. He found the door already open and Farid al-Rashidi standing in the center of the room. Gregory blinked once, fast, which was the only visible indication that he had not expected this. "Mr. al-Rashidi, can I help you?" "I want to discuss the waitress," Farid said. "I've already spoken with you about I don't mean your internal procedures." Farid's voice had the precise, even quality of a man who understood power and had arranged this conversation to make his understanding clear. "I mean that I want her terminated. Tonight. Before I leave this restaurant." Gregory looked at him steadily. "That's not something I'm able to do. I am telling you that I want it done." And I'm telling you that personnel decisions at the Golden Fork are not made in response to guest requests, regardless of the circumstances. We take incidents involving our staff seriously, and we review them according to our own standards. Farid tilted his head very slightly. Do you know who I am? Yes, Gregory said. You're a guest, a valued one. And we've gone to considerable lengths tonight to ensure your experience is exceptional, but I'm afraid what you're asking for is outside what I'm able to provide. A long pause. I will ensure, Farid said very quietly, that every business associate I have in this city hears about the quality of service at this establishment. That's your prerogative, Gregory said. Is there anything else I can do for you this evening? Farid looked at him for a moment with the expression of a man recalibrating. Then he turned and walked out. Gregory stood alone in his office for a moment. Then he took out his phone and sent a text message to the restaurant's owner, a man named Patrick Holt, that read, "Issue with VIP table tonight. Nothing unmanageable. Will call tomorrow." Staff conducted themselves well. He put the phone back in his pocket and returned to the floor. The restaurant closed at 11. By 11:30, the floor was cleared, the stations were reset, and the staff was in the back doing end-of-night checkout. The kitchen was quiet, except for the sound of the dishwasher running its final cycle. Devon found Claire at her locker. You good? Yeah, she said. That was something. It was. For what it's worth, Devon said, every person on this floor had your back tonight, even Joel, who feels terrible about the floor thing and has mentioned it approximately 9 times. Tell him once was enough, Claire said. The floor was an accident, everything else was a choice. Devon nodded. Also, he said with a different quality to his voice, was that actually REBA MCENTIRE who came up and talked to you? Claire looked at him. Yes. Devon stared. And she's a very kind person and very direct and exactly what you'd want her to be. Claire closed her locker. I'm going to miss my bus if I don't leave now. She put on her coat, picked up her bag, and walked out into the Nashville night. The air was cold and clear. The street was quiet in the way that late-night city streets are quiet, not silent, but emptied of urgency. The last of the restaurant's guests were long gone. The Harrington Towers lobby was lit but still. A cab idled half a block down. Claire walked to the bus stop on 5th Avenue and sat down on the bench under the orange streetlight. She put her bag on her lap. She took the card out of her apron pocket and looked at it again. A phone number, an email, just her name. Claire turned the card over. The back was blank. She put it in the inside pocket of her coat where it would not get bent. The bus came 6 minutes later. She got on, found a seat by the window, and watched Nashville slide past in the dark. When she got home, she took off her uniform, hung it up, set her alarm for 5:47, and got into bed. She did not sleep for a long time. She lay in the dark and thought about what REBA MCENTIRE had said. I've been watching people my whole career, and occasionally you see something in a person that makes you want to know what they're going to do with it. She thought about that for a while. Then she thought about her pharmacology exam. Then she fell asleep. Claire did not contact REBA MCENTIRE the day after the incident. She went to her nursing class, sat in the 3rd row, took 11 pages of notes on drug interaction protocols, and ate a sandwich in the campus common area while reviewing a case study on post-operative care. She answered 2 texts from her mother. One asking how she was, one asking if she needed anything, with the word fine, and then no thank you. She worked a lunch shift at the Golden Fork that was quiet and uneventful. She thought about the card in her coat pocket. She thought about it during the bus ride home. She thought about it while she made dinner, pasta with olive oil and garlic, because it was a Tuesday, and Tuesday was a pasta night. She thought about it while she washed the dishes, and while she reviewed her notes, and while she sat on the edge of her bed and looked at the water stain on the ceiling. The question she kept circling was not whether to call. It was what calling would mean, and whether she was prepared for whatever it might set in motion. Claire was not a person who made impulsive decisions. She made considered ones. She mapped outcomes. She thought about second and third consequences. This was how she had gotten through the past 2 years, not by leaping toward things, but by walking toward them carefully and with her eyes open. What she knew about Reba McEntire was this: she was one of the most successful country artists in American history, a woman who had built a career over 5 decades on something that went beyond talent, on a particular quality of resilience and authenticity that the audience could feel and that could not be manufactured. She had reinvented herself repeatedly without ever losing the thread of who she was. She was, by every account, sharp, genuine, and direct. What Reba had seen in Claire was something Claire herself was less certain about. She was competent. She was determined. She was good under pressure. She knew those things. But she had always thought of those qualities as tools for getting somewhere rather than as things valuable in themselves. "I'd like to know what you're going to do with it." What was she going to do with it? Nursing degree, 14 months, a steady, meaningful career helping people who needed help. That was the plan. She had made the plan carefully, and she was executing it carefully, and it was a good plan. It was a plan she believed in, but the card was in her coat pocket. On the 3rd day after the incident, she sent an email. "Dear Reba, my name is Claire Hutchins. We met briefly at the Golden Fork on Tuesday. You gave me your card. I'm not entirely sure what this conversation is, but I find myself curious about it, which for me is unusual enough to act on. If you're still open to it, I'd be happy to meet. Claire Hutchins." She read it 4 times before sending it. The reply came 3 hours later. "Claire, I'm glad you wrote. I'll be in Nashville again next Thursday. There's a coffee place on 12th Avenue South called Frothy Monkey that I like because they don't make a fuss. 10 a.m. if you're free." 3 days after the incident at the Golden Fork, in a corner suite at the Omni Nashville Hotel, Fareed al-Rashidi was on his 4th call of the morning and running 40 minutes behind on his schedule, which was the kind of thing that happened during deal negotiations, and which he managed through a combination of focused attention and the controlled irritation that his staff had learned to recognize and work around. His assistant, Khalid Nasser, 28, organized to the point of being almost algorithmically efficient, sat at the desk near the window with 3 tablets open in front of him and a phone pressed to his ear, managing 2 parallel conversations with the kind of practiced multitasking that Fareed paid him very well for. Fareed himself was standing at the window, looking out over downtown Nashville. The city spread below him in the morning light, all gleaming towers and the glittering thread of the Cumberland River. He had been in Nashville for 5 days. He would be here 4 more. The deal he was working on, a commercial real estate acquisition involving 3 properties in the downtown corridor, was proceeding, though with the particular friction that American deals tended to produce, where every agreement seemed to require twice as many conversations as should have been necessary. He had not thought about the restaurant incident again. This was not unusual. Fareed al-Rashidi did not make a habit of thinking about service staff. They existed within his world the way furniture existed, present, functional, occasionally malfunctioning. When they malfunctioned, he addressed it and moved on. And yet, when Khalid finished his call and turned to consult on the day's schedule, Fareed said, without particular inflection, "The girl from the restaurant on Tuesday." Khalid looked up. "Sir? The waitress who spilled the tea. What happened with her?" Khalid, who was professionally unflappable, kept his expression neutral. Mr. Marsh indicated that internal procedures would be followed. He did not commit to a specific outcome. Fareed was quiet for a moment. He was looking out the window. "Find out if she was dismissed." A pause. "Yes, sir." Fareed returned to his phone. Later, Much later, looking back on that morning, he would struggle to fully articulate why he had asked. He told himself it was a matter of principle, of standards. The incident had been embarrassing. It had occurred in a public setting. There should be consequences. That was logical. But there was also something else. A fragment, small and uncomfortable, that he had been not quite ignoring for 3 days. The way she had looked at him in the moment before she turned to get the manager. Not with defiance, not with submission, but with a kind of still, clear-eyed recognition. As though she was seeing him accurately, in a way that people rarely did, because people with money and power were rarely seen accurately, because everyone around them had reasons to see them as they wished to be seen. She had no reason to see him any particular way. She had just looked at him. Khalid called the restaurant's front office that afternoon. He was told, politely and without elaboration, that personnel matters were confidential. He reported this to Farid, who listened, nodded, and said nothing further. But he thought about it. The coffee shop on 12th Avenue South was exactly what Reba had described. Warm, low-key, the kind of place that smelled like roasted beans and old wood, and didn't announce itself as anything other than what it was. Claire arrived at 9:55 and found a corner table. She ordered a black coffee and sat with her hands around the mug and watched the door. Reba came in at 10:01 without fanfare, no entourage, no publicist, no visible security, just a woman in jeans and a red jacket who gave her order to the counter person with a quick smile and came directly to Claire's table. "You found it okay?" she said, sitting down. "I've been here before," Claire said. "It's a good place." "It is." Reba looked at her across the table with that same direct, assessing quality she'd had at the restaurant. "You look less like you're holding something together today." "I was working then," Claire said. "This is different." "How do you mean?" "At work, I'm performing a role. I'm good at it, but it's a role. This is just me." Reba tilted her head. "Most people perform themselves everywhere. It's nice to meet someone who knows the difference." Her coffee arrived. She thanked the server by name. She had apparently been here enough times to know it. And wrapped her hands around the mug. "Tell me about the nursing," she said. So Claire did. She talked about how she had chosen it. Not from some transformative experience, but from a practical assessment of what she was good at and what the world needed, and how those two things could intersect. She talked about the program, about Dr. Weldon, about the parts that were hard and the parts that surprised her. She talked about the spreadsheet, which made Reba laugh again. "And the restaurant," Reba said. "You said you were good at it, but it wasn't quite what you wanted." "It's a means to an end," Claire said. "Which is fine. Most things are when you're getting somewhere." "Do you ever feel like you're spending so much time getting somewhere that you miss where you are?" Claire considered this. "Sometimes. But the alternative is getting stuck where you are because you forgot to keep moving. I've seen that happen to people, and it looks worse." Reba nodded slowly. "What about Tuesday, the man at the table? I've been thinking about you since then. I figured you might ask about that." "How has it been since?" "Fine," Claire said. Then, because Reba was looking at her in the way that made fine seem like an evasion, "My manager handled it well. My co-workers were supportive. Professionally, it's resolved. And personally?" A pause. "It's the kind of thing that sticks," Claire said finally. "Not because it changed anything, or because I've given him more power over my life than he deserves. But because being spoken to that way, in front of people, it takes a few days to fully leave your body, even when your mind is fine." Reba was quiet for a moment. "That's very honest." "You asked honestly." "I did." Reba turned her mug slightly on the table. "Can I tell you why I came up to you that night?" "Please." "I've been in rooms my whole life where someone more powerful than me thought that power gave them permission to treat me as less than I was. Early in my career, it happened a lot. You learn very quickly in that situation that you have a choice. Not about whether it happens, you can't always control that, but about what you carry out of the room when it's over. Whether you walk out smaller or the same size. She paused. You walked out the same size, and I thought, whoever taught that young woman that, or whatever made her that way, that's worth knowing. That's worth paying attention to. The coffee shop was warm around them. Someone nearby was working on a laptop, headphones in. The counter person was grinding beans with a sound like distant thunder. Nobody taught me, Claire said. That's the only way I know how to do it. I know, Reba said. That's what makes it real. They sat for a moment in the comfortable silence of two people who have recognized something true in each other. I want to ask you something, Reba said. And I want you to take a second before you answer, because I know your instinct is going to be practical about it. And I want you to let yourself be a little less practical than usual. Claire waited. I have a foundation, Reba said. It supports women who are working toward healthcare careers while in financial need. Education grants, emergency funds, mentorship connections. We've been running it for 6 years. She paused. One of the things we do is tell stories about the women we support on social media, in press, at fundraising events. Real stories about real people. She looked at Claire steadily. I think your story is worth telling. Silence. What would that mean? Claire asked. It would mean you'd be comfortable with some version of your situation becoming public, what you're working toward, what happened Tuesday, if you consented to it. The foundation would provide financial support. I'm not going to dance around that. And you would be connected with people who can help accelerate what you're building. She paused again. And I want to be clear about something. This is not charity. I don't do charity. This is investment in someone whose trajectory is worth putting resources behind. Claire looked at her. Take your time, Reba said. You said to be less practical, Claire said. But I'm going to be practical about this for just a moment. Reba smiled. Fair enough. Why Tuesday? You've presumably seen other incidents, other service staff in difficult situations. I have, Reba said, and I've intervened a few times in smaller ways. But there was something specific about Tuesday. The way you composed yourself before you walked away. The way you were already thinking about your other tables before you'd even fully cleared the table where the incident happened. That wasn't just resilience. That was someone who had a plan and wasn't going to let one man's cruelty knock her off of it. A beat. I want to help that plan succeed, faster than it would on its own. Claire looked at her coffee. She looked up. I need to think about it, she said. Of course, Reba said. Take whatever time you need. They talked for another 40 minutes about other things. Nashville, music, a book Reba was reading, a documentary Claire had seen about emergency medicine. It was easy, the way conversations are easy when two people are paying real attention to each other. When they stood to leave, Reba hugged her briefly, naturally, the way some people do. You know how to reach me, she said. I do, Claire said. She walked back to her car and sat behind the wheel for a moment before starting the engine. She thought about the word investment. She turned it over in her mind like an object, feeling its edges. Then she started the car and drove home. What Farid al-Rashidi did not know, and what Khalid Nasser would have strongly advised against had he been consulted, was that two of the diners at nearby tables on the night of the incident had been recording on their phones. This was not unusual. People recorded at restaurants, at events, in public spaces, constantly and reflexively, in the way of people who had grown up in an era when documentation was as instinctive as breathing. Most of what they recorded went nowhere. It sat on a phone for a week and then got buried under newer recordings. The digital world swallowed most things. It did not swallow this one. The first video was posted on Thursday, 2 days after the incident, by a woman named Brooke Callahan, who had been dining at table 9 with a colleague from her marketing firm. The clip was 42 seconds. It showed most of the spill and all of the confrontation. Farid standing, his voice low but audible, the key phrases clear. "You cannot even manage that. You will not speak to me as though this is a conversation between equals. Get me your manager and remove yourself from my sight." It ended with Claire walking away. Brooke's caption read, "This man humiliated this waitress in front of the entire restaurant over an accident. She handled herself with more grace than I could have. This is not okay." By Friday morning, it had 300,000 views. By Saturday, a second video appeared, a wider angle shot from a different phone at a different table, which captured both the confrontation at table 7 and, crucially, a moment near the end of Claire's shift, a woman in a red jacket getting up from table 31 and walking across the restaurant floor toward Claire's section. The clip was 12 seconds and showed REBA MCENTIRE, recognizable to anyone who looked, speaking briefly to Claire before returning to her table. That caption read simply, "She saw," and she went over. That video hit 2 million views in 18 hours. By Sunday, Farid al-Rashidi's name was the 5th most searched term in the United States. Khalid Nasser, who monitored these things by professional necessity, saw the numbers on Saturday afternoon and sat very still at his desk for a long moment before picking up his phone. Khalid Nasser called Farid at 4:47 p.m. on Saturday with the focused calm of a man delivering difficult information in the most navigable way possible. "Sir," he said, "there's a situation you need to be aware of." He explained it methodically, the videos, the view counts, the social media conversation that had grown around the incident. He read several headlines aloud in his neutral reportorial tone. He mentioned that 3 of Farid's American business partners had sent messages, careful, non-committal messages, the kind that served as early indicators of concern without committing to a position. Farid listened without interrupting. "The acquisition team is asking," Khalid said carefully, "whether there will be a statement." "No statement," Farid said. "Yes, sir." A pause. "The view counts. What are they now?" Khalid checked. "The combined total across both videos and reshares is currently 11 million. Silence on the line. "I see," Farid said. He ended the call and stood at the window of his hotel suite for a long time. He was not, in this moment, thinking about the business implications, or not only about them. He was thinking about something harder to categorize. He had been in difficult situations before. Business disputes, failed deals, legal complications. He understood how to navigate those things because they operated on a logic he had spent his life mastering. This was different. What he was seeing, for the first time in a long time, was himself as other people saw him. Not filtered through the deference of employees or the negotiating interest of partners, but as a stranger with a phone camera saw him. A man with power, using it in a way that made people feel something. The something they were feeling was not admiration. He did not sleep well that night. The owner of the Golden Fork, Patrick Holt, was 52 years old and had been in the restaurant business for 28 years, which meant he had seen most things that could happen in a dining room and developed correspondingly strong opinions about how to handle them. He was in Nashville for the weekend when the videos went viral, and he called Gregory Marsh on Saturday evening. "Tell me everything," Patrick said. Gregory told him. Patrick was quiet for a moment. "And Claire?" "Conducted herself exactly as I would want any member of this staff to conduct themselves. Better, honestly." "And the floor being damp?" "That's documented in my incident report from that night." "Good." Patrick paused. "The internet is going to ask what we did. What did we do?" "I declined to terminate her." I told the guest that personnel matters were not subject to guest requests. I documented the floor conditions as a workplace issue. Okay, another pause. I want you to have a conversation with Claire before the week is out. Tell her the restaurant has her back, not in a vague way, specifically. Whatever she needs, we accommodate. He paused again. And I want it on record that this incident in no way affects her standing here. Already on record, Gregory said. I noted it the same night. That's why you've worked here for 12 years, Patrick said. Keep me updated. On Sunday evening, Claire Hutchins sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea and her phone and looked at the videos for the first time. Devon had texted her on Saturday morning to say you should probably know about this, and she had read the text and put her phone face down on the counter and gone for a walk along the Shelby Bottoms Greenway, which she did when she needed to think without the internet's help. She had walked for an hour and a half. It was cold and clear, and a group of geese were being extremely loud near the river, which she found oddly comforting. She had not looked at the videos until Sunday. She watched them both, straight through with the sound on. She watched herself stumble. She watched the tea fall. She watched Farid stand up. She heard his voice, "Remove yourself from my sight," and felt the same physical response she had felt in the room. Not quite fear, not quite anger, but a kind of tightening that started in the chest and radiated outward. She watched herself walk away. She looked good, she thought, in the purely technical sense. Back straight, chin level, no visible hesitation. Whatever she had been feeling was not visible. She was proud of that, and then she thought about the fact that she was proud of it, and she thought about whether that pride was its own kind of problem. The pride of a person who had learned to hide things so well, they had mistaken hiding for not feeling. Then she watched the second clip. The 12 seconds. REBA MCENTIRE getting up from table 31. She watched it twice. Then she picked up her phone and called her mother. Donna Hutchins answered on the second ring. "Hey, baby." "Did you see the videos?" Claire asked. "Your Aunt Linda sent me a link yesterday." A pause. "I watched them twice." And I cried a little," her mother said, "which you would have told me not to do if you'd been there, so it's fine that you weren't." Her voice was steady. "How are you?" "I'm figuring something out," Claire said. "Tell me." So she told her mother about REBA MCENTIRE at the coffee shop, about the foundation, the proposal, the word investment. She told her all of it in the careful, thorough way she talked to her mother about things that mattered. Donna was quiet for a moment when she finished. "What does your gut say?" "My gut says yes," Claire said. "My head is negotiating." "What's your head worried about?" "That I can't control it once it's in motion, that the story becomes something other than what it is. That people will see it and see something I didn't intend." "Like what?" "Like a victim," Claire said. "I don't think of myself as a victim." Her mother was quiet for another moment. "You know what I think?" "Tell me." "I think you can be the person who was treated badly, and the person who handled it with grace, and the person who is going to be a nurse in 14 months, and all of those things can be true at the same time. None of them cancels out the others." A pause. "And I think REBA MCENTIRE sat in that restaurant and watched you do your job well, under terrible circumstances, and thought, that woman's plan deserves to succeed. And she's offering to help it succeed." Another pause. "I don't think that's complicated." Claire sat with that. "You're smarter than me," Claire said. "I've had more practice," her mother said. "Let me know what you decide." They talked for a few more minutes about Donna's work schedule, about Claire's pharmacology exam, about a television show Donna had started watching that she wanted Claire to try. When they hung up, Claire sat at the table for a little longer. Then she opened her email and typed, "REBA, I'm in. Let's talk about what this looks like." Claire. She hit send before she could revise it. On Monday morning, Khalid Nasser received a call from the public relations firm. that handled Farid al-Rashidi's American business interests. They had been watching the story develop over the weekend and had opinions. Specifically, they believed that the situation required a response, that the current silence was being interpreted as indifference, and that indifference at this level of public attention had a measurable impact on business relationships and deal-making environments. Khalid relayed this to Farid with his customary precision. Farid listened. Then he said something that surprised Khalid. "Find out her name." "I'm sorry?" "The waitress, her full name, and contact information for the restaurant management." Khalid had acquired, over 3 years of working for Farid al-Rashidi, a quality of professional discretion that meant he did not ask why. He found these things. Within 2 hours, he had Claire's full name. It had appeared in several of the news articles covering the videos, and the restaurant's management contact. He brought this information to Farid, who read it, set it aside, and was quiet for a long moment. "I want to reach out to her," Farid said. Khalid blinked. "Once." "Sir?" "Not through the PR firm, not through the restaurant, directly." He paused. "Arrange it." "I'll need something to offer," Khalid said carefully. "In terms of purpose, she'll need to understand the context of the outreach." Farid looked at him with the expression of a man who was working through something he hadn't entirely resolved. Tell her I would like to speak with her, that I have something I want to say to her directly." "Yes, sir." Khalid made the call to the restaurant management later that afternoon. He spoke with Gregory Marsh, who was, characteristically, polite and non-committal. He explained the request and asked that it be passed on to the staff member in question. Gregory listened to the entire thing. Then he said, "I'll let her know the request was made. Whether she chooses to respond is entirely up to her." Khalid thanked him and ended the call. Gregory knocked on the door of the locker room 10 minutes later, where Claire was getting ready for her Tuesday evening shift. "You have a message," he said. He told her what Khalid had said. Claire stood with her coat half on, listening. When Gregory finished, she was quiet for a moment. "He wants to speak with me directly," she repeated. That was the message, yes. She thought about this. She thought about it with the same methodical clarity she applied to most things. "Do I have to respond?" "Absolutely not," Gregory said. "This was passed on to you as a courtesy. You have zero obligation." She nodded. "Thank you." She finished putting on her coat and went out to the floor. On Tuesday evening, exactly 1 week after the incident, Claire had a video call with REBA and the director of the REBA MCENTIRE Foundation for Women in Healthcare, a woman named Dr. Sandra Crofton, who had been running the foundation's programs for 4 years and had the particular quality of someone who was very good at their work and had long stopped needing anyone to tell her so. The call lasted 55 minutes. Dr. Crofton explained the foundation's structure, the grant program, the mentorship network, the storytelling initiative that REBA had mentioned. She was specific in a way that Claire appreciated. Amounts, timelines, expectations, what was being asked and what was being offered. No vagueness, no sentimentality. Just the facts, laid out clearly so that a person could make an informed decision. "The grant we're proposing," Dr. Crofton said, "would cover your remaining tuition in full. That's approximately 14 months of part-time program costs, plus associated materials and licensing fees. In exchange, we ask for your participation in 2 storytelling events, one digital, one in person, and your consent to share a version of your story through our communication channels. The narrative is always reviewed and approved by the individual before publication. Nothing goes out that you haven't signed off on." "And the story," Claire said, "how much of Tuesday is part of it?" "As much or as little as you're comfortable with," Dr. Crofton said. "The incident is already public. We're not adding to its exposure. We're providing context. The context being, this is a woman working towards something real. What happened to her is one moment in a larger picture. We want to tell the larger picture." Claire nodded slowly. And the framing? I want to be clear about something. Please, Dr. Crofton said. I don't want to be framed as someone who needed rescuing, Claire said. I want to be framed as someone who was doing the work and is continuing to do the work. The support accelerates something that was already in motion. It doesn't create the motion. Dr. Crofton looked at her through the screen with an expression that was close to satisfaction. That, she said, is almost exactly the language in our mission statement. Reba, who had been listening quietly through most of the call, said, I told you. Dr. Crofton smiled. I believe you did. They spent the final 20 minutes going over next steps, documents to review, a timeline for the grant, a preliminary conversation about the storytelling events. When the call ended, Claire sat at her kitchen table for a moment. She thought 14 months, covered. She thought, done in 14 months. She thought about her mother working double shifts. She thought about the spreadsheet on her phone and what it would look like if the tuition column went to 0. She thought about the patients she would eventually care for, real people in real pain, needing real help, and how 14 months from now she would be qualified to provide it. She opened the spreadsheet and stared at it for a long time. Then she closed it and made herself dinner and went to bed early for the first time in months. The Foundation's social media team published Claire's story on a Thursday, 3 weeks after the incident at the Golden Fork. The piece was thorough and carefully written. It had gone through 4 rounds of Claire's revisions and 2 rounds of Dr. Crofton's. And the final version was something Claire could read without feeling like someone else's version of herself stared back at her. The headline read, "She kept her head up. Now she's finishing what she started." The article covered her background: East Nashville, Gallatin Avenue, the part-time nursing program, the 4 shifts a week, the spreadsheet. It mentioned the incident at the restaurant in 2 paragraphs that were factual and unsensational. It quoted Claire directly. What happened that night was not the most important thing about that night. The most important thing was that I went back to work and I did my job well and I came home and I studied. That's what I do. That's who I am. It quoted Reba. I saw a young woman who had a plan and refused to let someone else's cruelty become a detour. The Foundation exists for exactly this kind of person. Claire Hutchins doesn't need to be rescued. She needs the runway to land. By the end of the first day, the article had been shared 900,000 times. By the end of the week, Claire had received emails from 43 nurses and nursing students around the country, most of them short and specific. I saw your story and I wanted you to know that I see you. She read every one. She responded to 26, the ones where she felt she had something real to say. She had a pharmacology exam on the Friday the story ran. She got a 91. Patrick Holt came to the restaurant the Tuesday after the story published. He asked Gregory to bring Claire to the office after the lunch service. She came in still in her uniform, which she had not taken off yet because she had come directly from a difficult table that had required her full attention until the very end. She sat across from Patrick Holt and Gregory Marsh and waited. First, Patrick said, I want to say directly that the Golden Fork is proud to have you on staff. That should have been said sooner, and it's being said now. Claire nodded. Second, he said, we'd like to offer you a permanent move to section lead, more consistent scheduling, a pay increase, and the latitude to mentor newer staff. He paused. We understand you have 14 months left in your program. We'd like to be part of making those 14 months as manageable as possible. Claire looked at him, then at Gregory. Section lead while finishing the program. The schedule can be built around your class commitments, Gregory said. We've done it before with other staff in academic programs. It's workable. She thought about it for approximately 10 seconds. Yes, she said. Thank you. Patrick extended his hand across the desk. She shook it. One more thing, he said. This isn't an official message, but thank you for how you handled yourself that night. It reflected well on everyone in this building. Claire looked at him steadily. "I was doing my job," she said. "That's exactly what I mean," Patrick said. 11 days after the story ran, Claire Hutchins typed an email. She had thought about it, revised it, deleted it twice, and started over. In the final version, it was 4 sentences. "Mr. Al-Rashidi, I understand you wanted to speak with me. I'm not sure a conversation is necessary. But I'll say what I would have said. I didn't deserve what happened that night, and I think some part of you knows that. I hope, for your sake as much as mine, that it stays with you. Claire Hutchins." She sent it to Khalid Nasser's contact, which was the only point of contact she had. She did not expect a response. She sent it because she had something to say, and it was more honest to say it than to carry it silently. That was all. She got a response 12 hours later. It was from Farid al-Rashidi directly. 5 sentences. "Ms. Hutchins, you are correct that you did not deserve what happened. I have been considering that for some time. I'm not accustomed to being seen clearly by people I have treated poorly. And your email required a degree of honesty I am still adjusting to. I do not ask for forgiveness, as I have not earned it. I only want to say that I am aware of the injustice, and that awareness is not nothing. F. Al-Rashidi." Claire read it 3 times. She did not respond. She sat with it for a while, not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with something quieter, something that felt like the particular relief of a chapter that had reached its natural end. Not a resolution exactly, not a reconciliation. Just a moment of mutual recognition between 2 people who had been briefly, significantly connected by something neither of them had chosen, and who were now, separately and in their own ways, returning to their lives. She put her phone down. She picked up her pharmacology notes. She studied until midnight. The Tennessee Board of Nursing sent the results by email, as they always did. A plain, formal message with her name and a confirmation number, and the words "pass" in capital letters in the second line. Claire read it standing in the break room at the Golden Fork, still in her uniform, still in the middle of a Tuesday evening shift. She read it once, then again. Then she put her phone in her apron pocket and went back out to the floor. Devon noticed something in her face when she came back. "What?" he said. "Nothing," she said. "Table 16 needs their check." "Claire." She looked at him. She was smiling in a way she didn't usually smile. Not the professional warmth she deployed on the floor, but the real kind, the private kind, the kind that arrived without warning and couldn't be fully contained. "I passed my boards," she said. Devon stared at her. Then he made a sound that was somewhere between a shout and a laugh and grabbed her by the shoulders. Maggie, who was passing behind them with a dessert tray, stopped and said, "What's happening?" And Devon said, "She passed her boards." And Maggie put the dessert tray down on the nearest surface and hugged her. And Joel Pierce came over from the service station and said, "What's going on?" And then Devon told him. And then Joel hugged her too. And for approximately 90 seconds, the most professional section of the Golden Fork's main floor was slightly chaotic, with the very good kind of noise. "Table 16 still needs their check," Claire said, when the noise settled. "I'll get it," Maggie said, already moving. Claire straightened her uniform. She took a breath. She went back to work. 3 days later, Claire called Reba. They had talked every few weeks since the coffee shop. Short calls, easy ones, the kind that had settled into something that was not quite mentorship and not quite friendship, but had the particular warmth of both. Reba answered on the 3rd ring with the familiar, unhurried quality that Claire had come to appreciate about her. "I passed my boards," Claire said. A pause, and then Reba's voice, warm and full. "Well, of course you did." Claire laughed. "Tell me everything," Reba said. "Where were you when you found out?" "Break room at work." "Still in uniform?" "Still in uniform." "And then what did you do?" "Went back to the floor," Claire said. Reba laughed, the real one, the full one. That is the most you thing I have ever heard. I had a table that needed their check. You are going to be a spectacular nurse, Reba said. I want you to know that. I know, Claire said, not with arrogance, just with the simple, settled certainty of a person who had been working towards something long enough to have earned the right to believe in it. They talked for 22 minutes. About the job she had accepted, a position in the cardiovascular unit at Vanderbilt University Medical Center starting in 6 weeks. About her mother, who had cried when Claire told her, which Donna Hutchins almost never did. About the first storytelling event for the foundation, which Claire had attended in February and which had been harder and more meaningful than she had anticipated. About Nashville in the early weeks of winter, which was cold and clear and had a particular quality of light. What happens next? Reba asked near the end. I start the job, Claire said. I figure out what kind of nurse I am. I keep going. That's it? That's everything, Claire said. Reba was quiet for a moment. Then, you know, when I walked across that restaurant floor a year ago, I had a feeling about you. I've had that feeling about people before, and I've been wrong sometimes. But I had it, and I went. I'm glad you did, Claire said. So am I, hun, Reba said. So am I. Claire worked her last shift at the Golden Fork on a Tuesday evening in early December, which felt right somehow, given that it had all started on a Tuesday evening in October. Gregory gave her a card signed by every person on staff. Patrick Holt sent flowers, a simple arrangement, nothing excessive, which was exactly what she would have wanted. Devon brought a cake from the bakery on Gallatin Avenue, 2 doors from her apartment, which she had not known he knew about. She worked the full shift. Section lead, tables 12 through 19, the center of the floor. She did it well, the way she always had, attentive, precise, warm in exactly the right measure. She cleared her last table at 10:47. She did her checkout. She said goodbye to everyone individually, which took longer than she intended, because she kept meaning to be brief and finding she wasn't. She handed her keycard back to Gregory at the door. It's been a privilege, he said. It has, she said. Thank you for that night. He knew which night she meant. He nodded once, with the particular Gregory Marsh quality of saying a great deal in a small gesture. She walked out into the December night. Nashville was cold, and the street was quiet, and the bakery, 2 doors from her apartment on Gallatin Avenue, was closed at this hour. Though she could still smell something, yeast and sugar and warmth, that might have been real or might have been memory. The city hummed in the way that cities do when they don't need to prove themselves. She walked to the bus stop on 5th Avenue and sat down under the orange streetlight and waited. She thought about the first time she had sat at this bus stop 2 years ago, going home after a difficult shift, thinking about the spreadsheet on her phone and the 14 months ahead of her and the water stain on her ceiling, and whether the plan would hold. The plan had held. She thought about Table 7 and the man who had stood up slowly and spoken to her in a quiet voice that carried contempt the way certain instruments carry a note, with complete control and complete intention. She thought about walking away from that table. She thought about the card in her apron pocket and the coffee shop on 12th Avenue South and Dr. Crofton's methodical, clear-eyed generosity. She thought about her mother's voice on the phone. You can be all of those things at the same time. None of them cancels the others. The bus came. She got on. She found a seat by the window and watched Nashville move past in the dark. The lit windows, the empty streets, the Cumberland River gleaming in the distance. She had her badge in her bag, the Vanderbilt University Medical Center ID, with her photo and her name, and under it, her title. Claire Hutchins, RN. The bus rolled north along the avenue. The city was quiet around her. She was going home.